When we move on to Psalm 2, we will notice as we explore Psalm 2 that Psalm 2 in some way fits together with Psalm 1, except they are very, very different and very much of a contrast. Psalm 1 begins with this celebration. Here's to the good stuff in life, and here's to those who don't do the good stuff. But in Psalm 2, it begins with that basic question that we have, why? And it's a negative why. Why do the nations why are the nations in an uproar? And why do the people mutter empty threats? Why do the kings of the earth rise up in revolt, and the princes plot together against the Lord and against the Lord's anointed? Why? What we have here is really a lament about those in power and a lament about what is going wrong with this world. But it moves on to describe the nations and the peoples, the kings and the princes or the rulers, and this is what it says about them. They say, "Let us break their yoke. Let us cast off their bonds." They're saying, let us be independent. Let us exert our Bill of Rights about being free from the covenant that we're in. And then it moves on. We get a rich contrast. We usually don't hear about God laughing. But in verse 3, we do get God laughing, or verse 4. The one whose throne is in heaven is laughing. The Lord has these kings and rulers and peoples and nations in derision. He sort of treats them like fools. Then the Lord speaks to them in his wrath, and his rage fills them with terror. We have two contrasting themes of kingship here. And the lament is, why do those who are currently in power think that they can live independent and free from the responsibilities that God has given to them? So after God gives this judgment about these rulers, these kings, these leaders, then he says, I have set my king on my holy hill of Zion. I have set the king that I want. I have set a king that pleases me on my holy hill of Zion. I have set a king that is in contrast to these plotters. And we move now to a promise that gets tied with Jesus' baptism. Let me announce the decree of the Lord. The Lord said to me, "You are my son, today I have begotten you." You are my heir. You are the one who is made in my image and carrying out my desires. You are my son, my beloved. Today I have begotten you are words that we hear both at Jesus' baptism and the transfiguration. But notice the contrast here is between the anointed one, which is in Hebrew, the Mashiach, the Messiah, is one who looks and acts and represents this God who celebrates a different way of organizing the universe that is different than the rebellion of the current kings and rulers. After that, there's this promise. God says, "Ask of me, and I will give you the nations for your inheritance and the ends of the earth for your possession." God doesn't say, "Go out and conquer them." God says, "I will simply give them to you as my heir. So receive them." And exercise your authority and power over them in the ways that I would do it. And then after this phrase that we find troubling sometimes, you shall crush them with an iron rod and shatter them like a piece of pottery. This representation that these arrogant rulers who think they have all the answers will be brought low, and a different kind of king. Toward the end, we have a warning. Now, you rulers, you kings, be wise, and be warned, you rulers of the earth. Submit to the Lord with fear, and with trembling bow before him. A warning and an admonition about the alternative rulers who like to lord it over the others and like to declare their brilliance and independence. The Psalm 2 ends with a tie-in to Psalm 1. The last verse in Psalm 2 is, "Happy are all those who take refuge in God." It's that same way that Psalm 1 begins. Fortunate are those who find their shelter and refuge in God. Now, there's one other word that ties these two Psalms together. It goes way back to verse 1. And the people mutter empty threats. It's the same word in Hebrew as they meditate on the law day and night. Muttering, meditating, they mull over in detail. And I think these two words, meditate in Psalm 1 and the king's muttering empty threats, tie these two Psalms together, and then the two toasts at the beginning and end. So read this and think about how this might apply to a different sort of kingdom that is being talked about here, and a kingdom that I think Jesus is also bringing about.